Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at gross pay. So a person's gross pay is the amount of money they've earned before any deductions like taxes, retirement, healthcare, etc. We'll discuss three different types of payments: hourly wage, commission, and piecework. So hourly wage is probably the most straightforward. A person gets paid the same amount for every hour they work. Typically, these can go in increments of 15 minutes or a quarter of an hour. The equation that we're going to use is W times H equals P, or the wage times the hours equals the pay. So for example, Shelly gets paid $15 per hour. If she works 30 hours this week, what is her gross pay? So 15 times 30 gives us $450. Mark was paid $300 this week and worked 15 hours. What is his hourly wage? So here we know H, the number of hours he worked, and we know P, his wage, so we're going to solve for W. So 15 times W equals 300. We'll divide both sides by 15 and get the W equals 300 divided by 15, which is $20 per hour. Remember that these, when we're looking for hourly wage or pay, that they're in dollars, so we need to make sure that if there is decimals, that we round to 2 decimal places. Larry gets paid $25 per hour and worked 55 hours this week. Anything over 40 hours is considered overtime, and he gets paid time and a half. That's typically the case. It might be different depending on where you work, but usually if you work over 40 hours, you get overtime. Overtime is usually considered time and a half. So let's find his gross wage based on that, his gross pay. So Larry worked 40 hours at $25 per hour and 15 hours overtime at time and a half. We take the hourly wage, $25, and multiply by 1.5. So for the 15 hours of overtime, he'd get paid $37.50 per hour. So that gives us 40 times 25 plus 15 times 37.5. And that gives us $1,562.50. And then for the last one, for hourly wage, Sandra works 38 hours this week at $17.50 per hour. Find her gross pay. So again, we're just going to take the hours and multiply by the wage. So 38 times 17.50 gives her a wage of $665. Next, we're going to look at commission. So commission is usually given to salesperson, so people who are selling things, and it can be in addition to a salary. If someone is working strictly on commission, but they don't end up making enough for what would have been minimum wage, they do have to get paid at least minimum wage. So we think of commission usually as getting more, but you're never going to get less than minimum wage. Commissions are percentages of sales, so we're going to use that basic percent equation, which is going to look like P times S equals C for us, or the percentage times the sales equals commission. Sometimes the commission is on all sales, sometimes it's restricted, and we'll go over both of those cases here. So in our first case, Paul gets 8% commission on all sales. Find his gross pay if he made $6,500 in sales. So it's the commission percent, so 0.08. So again, make sure you put percentages as decimals as always. So 0.08 times 6,500, and we get $520. And again, make sure that if it comes out with decimals, you always round to the nearest hundredth. So Lily makes 10% commission on all net sales. So this is a little different than all sales, it's net sales. Find her gross pay if she had $22,000 in gross sales and $2,500 in returns. So what we mean by net sales is gross sales minus any returns. So she doesn't get a commission on items that were returned. So in this case, her net sales would be $22,000 minus $2,500, which is $19,500. So this is what she'll get 10% on. So So 10% is 0.10, so multiply that by the 19,500. And Lily makes a commission of $1,950. Jordan makes 7% commission on all net sales over $10,000. So that means that if Jordan sells $10,000 worth of material or goods or whatever it is that she's selling, she doesn't get commission on that because that's kind of expected within her job. So she probably would end up getting some type of salary in addition to this, but we're not going to worry about that for this case. So find her gross pay if she makes $140,000 in gross sales and had $25,000 in returns. So again, the first thing we got to do is find net sales. So the gross sales minus the returns, $140,000 minus $25,000 gives us $115,000. And then we need net sales over $10,000. So we're going to take the $115,000, subtract the $10,000 that she's kind of expected to do, and we end up getting that she'll get commission on $105,000. So 7% is 0.07. So 0.07 times the $105,000 gives us $7,350 in commission. For the last commission problem, Carl makes 7% in commission on all net sales over $250. He also has a salary of $500. Find his gross pay if he had $1,200 in gross sales and returns of $350. So his net sales is $1,200 minus the returns of $350 is $850. Net sales over $250 is $850 minus $250. So Carl is going to get commission on $600 worth of sales. So his commission is 7%, again 0.07 times 600, $42. And then to find his net pay, we're going to add that commission to his salary. So his gross pay rather. His gross pay, I definitely should say gross, not net. Gross pay is $542. The last type of gross pay we're going to look at is piecewise. So employees can be paid by the amount of work accomplished, not just the time it took to do the work. So for instance, a seamstress might be paid by the number of garments altered, whether it took her 2 hours or 5 hours. But again, just like with commission, they still need to make at least minimum wage. So Jack gets paid for every box he puts together. He gets paid $2.50 for each box correctly constructed, but he's docked 75 cents for every box he breaks. So what that means is if he makes a box but he breaks it, he does not get the $2.50 and he owes 75 cents. So if he only made one box but he broke it, he owes his employer 75 cents. So he's not getting the $2.50 and then minusing 75 cents. If he makes 30 boxes correctly and breaks 5 boxes, what is his gross pay? So the easiest way to figure this out is we're going to make a table. So we're going to have type, and then that's the type of boxes. He created it or he broke it. The pay rate, so a positive $2.50 if he made it correctly, and negative 75 cents if he broke it. And then amount, he made 30 boxes correctly, and he broke 5 boxes. So he made a total of 35 boxes, 5 were broken, 30 were correct. And then we're going to figure out the gross pay. So if he gets paid per amount, then we just need to multiply the pay rate times the amount. So this gross pay is going to be multiplying these numbers together. So $2.50 times 30 gives us $75. Negative 75 cents times 5 gives us $3.75. The total here will be our answer. And again, we want to make sure that we're subtracting that $3.75. So Jack gets paid $72.25. And again, assuming that he's working legitimately and not like under the counter, if that's not equal to at least minimum wage, depending on how long he took to do this, he would at least get minimum wage. Susan gets paid for every zipper that she sews into a dress. She gets paid $350 for each zipper. If she breaks the zipper, she's docked $2.25. So again, not only does she not get the $350, she owes $2.25. If she exceeds her quota of 200 zippers, she gets paid $4.75 for each additional zipper. We can kind of think of that like getting paid overtime. Find her gross pay if she sewed 265 zippers, breaking 10 of them. So again, we're going to fill in a table very similar to the one we just used. So we have 3 different types here. We have dresses under the quota of 200, dresses above the quota, and broken zippers. And the pay rates for each of them: $350 for dresses under the quota, $475 if she makes more than the quota, negative $225 if she broke them. We know that she did 265 zippers, so that's the total. She broke 10 of them, so we need to fill in the other ones. How many were above the quota, how many were under the quota? So her quota is 200 zippers. She made more than that even when we consider that she broke 10 of them. So for dresses under quota, it would be the 200. And then above the quota is whatever is left. So there's 265 total, minus the 200 that were below the quota, minus the 10 that were broken, and we can fill in the amount for dresses above quota, which would end up being 55. So if we add these 3 together, we get the total of 265. And again, to find the gross pay, we're just going to multiply these numbers together. So $350 for 200 gives us $700. $475 times 55 gives us $261.25. And then she's docked $22.50 for the 10 zippers that she broke. We'll add them together, again remembering to subtract the broken zipper pay. And she gets a total of $938.75. For our last example, Carol gets paid for every lawn she mows. She gets $20 for each lawn, but is deducted $5 for every complaint she receives. If she mows more than 5 lawns in a given day, she's paid $30 for each additional one. Find her gross pay if she mows 12 lawns but receives 4 complaints. So again, we have the 3 different types. We have lawns under quota, lawns above quota, and complaints. The pay rates: $20, $30, and negative $5. The amount, so total amount, doesn't make sense here because we wouldn't be adding lawns to complaints, so there's no total here. But we've got the 4 complaints from the problem. And again, the quota is 5, so lawns under quota will end up being the quota, which is 5. And then she mowed 12 lawns, so lawns above quota must be 7, because 5 plus 7 must be the 12. Okay, so we're not going to add complaints to lawns, so just the 2 lawn numbers should add up to 12. And then again, the gross pay, we're going to multiply the pay rate by the amount. So we get $100 for the lawns under quota, $210 for the lawns above quota, negative $20 for the 4 complaints. And that gives a total of $290. So let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.